in the midst of a public health crisis.
Now, when political actors from the government side are also now responding politically, all of a sudden they say everybody should begin to tone down on politicization. That is the truth. So it's important that we all not be silent when our candidate is politicizing the matter.
We'll hear from both sides and seek the views of an analyst who'll be studying how parties are seeking to make political capital of this crisis.
This is Top Story with Evans Mensah.
And Top Story is always brought to you by Bond Savings and Loans. Your success, our passion, is also brought to you by Gasem Cement, the nation building. Vodafone, the future is exciting, ready. It has been trending all since morning. The politicization of the coronavirus pandemic, particularly, Twitter has been ablaze with criticism of Vice President Muhammadu Bawumia. In fact, the hashtag Bawumia should focus has been trending for a while. Today, the information minister at the press briefing took the opportunity to address the issue head on. He was emphatic that others who have been politicizing the issue should be called out, and that they, in essence, reserve the right to respond in kind when others have taken the opportunity to capitalize on the coronavirus pandemic. This was the briefing today where we stood in terms of our coronavirus cases, which is inching close to 3,000 infections. I want to go to the details of the briefing with regards to the specifics of the cases and the deaths later. But listen to Information Minister Kojo Oppong Nkrumah as he articulated, his frustration with the politicization of the issue.
The president has been making it in his speeches. We have to focus on the common enemy, that's COVID-19, and not on one another. Initially, when we started making these calls for an apolitical discussion of the subject, and for us to create more room for the experts to do the analysis, we were mocked. You'll recall some of the political leaders were mocking us and making all sorts of comments. At that time, some of the very respected persons who are making these calls for a de-escalation of politics today, at that time they were very quiet, because as it appears, their political leaders and their candidates were championing a political agenda at the time. Now, when political actors from the government side are also now responding politically, all of a sudden they say everybody should begin to tone down on politicization. That is the truth of what has happened so far. The nation, in all honesty, stands a real risk of losing focus and degenerating into partisan political banter, while the real key issue of COVID-19 and managing it is relegated to the background. That's a real risk that we run, where we are going. So it's important that we all not be silent when our candidate is politicizing the matter, only to speak when other people start responding politically. What is good for the goose is good for the gander. Let's be honest in this country. If we don't want politics in this matter like we are preaching it, when people start politicizing it, the faith-based groups, the religious leaders, the civil society organizations, the media, call it out. That this is politics, let's put it aside and focus on the enemy. If you don't, the other side also has politicians. They will start politicizing it, and we will be the collective losers. If the senior statesmen sit around because their political candidate is politicizing a matter, and they choose not to condemn it, religious leaders, civil society groups, everybody sits by, then don't be surprised when political actors from the other side also start responding. However, we still have an opportunity to keep our collective focus and to cut out partisanship so that we can win together.
And that is the Information Minister today at the press briefing where he outlined the concerns with the politicization of the subject of COVID-19. And it comes on the back of what has been a big issue for many people when it comes to the issues of politics and COVID-19. If you check the Twitter trends today, you will see the hashtag Bawumia must focus. Has been trending number one for a while. It's on the back of yesterday's briefing that he himself made on some of the key issues that the former President John Dramani Mahama has been talking about in his regular Facebook live sessions. Now, Dr. Bawumia took on the issue yesterday when he spoke to the press, especially called briefing, just to respond to some of these allegations. And I'm sure you heard, could you reference the point about political actors within government responding to issues of politicization by others? This is what he was referring to.
If you want to test the robustness of an economy, you test it in a time of crisis. Thankfully, we have had two crises. Under the NDC, there was an internally generated crisis, which was Dumso. Under the presidency of Nana Akufo-Addo, there has been an externally generated crisis, which has been the global coronavirus pandemic. I just want you to ask yourselves, how have these two crises been managed? The Dumso crisis, which crippled this economy for 4 years. What were the mitigating measures offered to businesses and individuals during Dumso? This was an internally generated crisis. We saw that even during Dumso, electricity prices were being increased. Fuel prices were being increased. Teacher training allowances were being cancelled. Nursing training allowances were being... All of that was happening during that particular crisis. You look at the coronavirus crisis and you look at the difference in terms of what has happened. President has reduced electricity prices, made it free for lifeline consumers, has given free water for all Ghanaians for 3 months, has made sure that there is a stimulus package of 600 million Ghana cedis for businesses. And we have seen domestic production of PPEs, personal protective equipment for our health workers locally. So that the difference couldn't be more stark between the leadership under a crisis, under the Dumso, and that under the coronavirus epidemic. So I ask a simple question. Who will you trust in a time of crisis? The answer, I would say, is very, very clear. Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo has shown leadership and concern for ordinary Ghanaians.
Well, he's been criticized for these comments that he made yesterday, but the argument, as you've heard the information minister articulate, is that he was simply responding to the politicization that he believes others started. Others like former President John Dramani Mahama, who has been addressing the public through his Facebook live sessions. This was him last week speaking on some of the issues.
Ghanaians died when hospitals completed and ready with a combined capacity of 900 beds had been left standing idle. Particularly worrying is the abandonment of some major health facilities that had reached an advanced stage of completion by the time we left office. Whatever the challenges with these projects, they should not have been left abandoned and left at the mercy of invading weeds and reptiles, and in some cases, been affected by bushfires. And what has been the cause of the abandonment and stoppage of work, despite the availability of funds for the continuation and completion? Fruitless and malice-driven value for money audits that yielded virtually nothing.
So that is the former president there, former President John Dramani Mahama. I want to bring in now a member of the NDC COVID-19 team. He's a former health minister, Alex Segbefia. Mr. Segbefia, thank you for your time here on Top Story.
Good evening to you, Evans, and good evening to your listeners and viewers. Not sure whether you're on.
Also joining me tonight is the Deputy Information Minister at Pius Hajide. Pius, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me, my brother.
Okay. Mr. Segbefia, so you heard the Information Minister at the top make the point that others, and let's be frank about this, that reference was to you, although he didn't mention your name in particular. I'm talking about the party and the former president, that others have been doing this, politicizing it, and they've been warning it. And so when they choose to respond, he calls out civil society, media, we should call you out. I mean, so the question is, why, if it's true what Kojo Oponkoman is saying, have you been seeking to make political capital out of a public health crisis?
I'm a bit perplexed because I'm not exactly sure whether the ruling government is fully aware that they are in government and everybody else is in opposition who is in a political party. The posture of governance and what you do when you're in government is not the same when you're in opposition. The freedom which opposition parties have are not the same freedoms that government has. And if I'm hearing you right, is it the case that it is being said that because we have a crisis on our hand, and before it is solved, and the people who are responsible for solving it are the government of the day, and because certain people have made various comments which they feel are of a political nature, then they are now going to go political and respond politically, regardless of the fact that the issue has not yet been resolved? Is that what is being said?
Well, Kojo Pokemon was clear that if you insist on making political capital, they reserve the right, I guess, paraphrasing him, to also respond.
Then good luck to them. Ghanaians will be the judges because we have a crisis on our hands. At what point do you draw the line between constructive criticism and politics?
Which one have you been doing?
Well, let me put it this way: the prerogative of the the minority is not to explain one way or the other what it is we are doing. We don't even need to explain it.
I mean, is yours constructive criticism of politics?
Well, if they feel that they want to respond politically, please. They already the most important aspect of this. We didn't even say that the president should not have mentioned hospitals. We said the platform he used was wrong and it was political. We didn't say it. Media came out, civil society came out that this issue of hospitals and the time limits was not the best. It has been followed by the second gentleman of the land coming out with a totally political statement. Now we are being told that, well, because of certain political statements from elsewhere or by others, we have then decided to take everything in COVID political. Good luck.
When I'm bringing the Deputy Information Minister, Pius, the point that Alessandro is making is they are in a position. I mean, so they have the room if they want to do, if that's what you think they are doing, but you don't have the same luxury. And in fact, I just checked the Twitter trends just now on my phone. There are 9,031 tweets with the hashtag Bawumia must focus trending number one the whole day. Isn't that, I guess, a point in their feather in their cap to say to you that the public doesn't look kindly on a government faced with a crisis taking the bait and doing politics or responding in kind politically when you have a crisis unresolved?
Well, good evening to you, Evans, and thank you for having me once again. It appears to me that what I'm hearing my senior colleague say is that we can operate two sets of rules, one for the opposition that may be allowed to play partisan politics with COVID-19, show outright insensitivity to the plight of the people, but the government has to remain focused on dealing with what he claims is the expectations of the person. If those are the ground rules that are being set, then I also say good luck to him. I believe that the people of Ghana are fair-minded and they expect at this point that we should all join hands as a people and treat this COVID-19 pandemic as a national issue and galvanize all of the country, no matter which political persuasion you come from, around the fact that we need to be united in resolving this challenge.
But that's not what Dr. Bawumia did yesterday, which is, I guess, was the context of Nkrumah's response today.
That's the context, and that's exactly what explains where we have to head towards. And that's what I'm saying. That's been the attitude and approach of this government from the very beginning. I'm happy that Mr. Sebefia is on the other side of the line, because he will recall that very early in the day, at the Ministry of Information alone, even at that level, we involved all political parties. We came together. He represented the NDC at that MOI engagement of political parties to norm the ideas and to fashion out how we, for instance, must go about communications as far as COVID-19 is concerned. You also recall that very early in April, the president pulled together all political parties to galvanize the entire country so that we can have a national attitude towards fighting COVID-19. Unfortunately, the leader of the party's largest opposition party, the NDC, was himself absent from that meeting, even though he was within the jurisdiction. Again, His Excellency the President, around the 16th of March, met with the leadership of Parliament, both minority and majority. Again, the view was to tap into ideas from all spheres, no matter what political persuasion one comes from, so that we can be able to fashion out a national response. What we have been seeing, and the invitation of the Honorable Minister for Information is an honest invitation and a truthful invitation, is that we should call out wrongdoing when it does occur, irrespective of who may have gone wrong. What we have noticed is that Mr. Mahama has made 7, at least, and the last time I counted, a few minutes ago, 7 public pronouncements, and not just pronouncements, but actual engagements, speeches, sometimes pre-prepared, sometimes Facebook Live speeches, which, if you monitor, are only an attempt to politicize. And he goes on. The last time he engaged in the Facebook Live engagement, for instance, he said, for instance, that the economy of the country was weak and was on life support. Yes, and went ahead and peddled falsehood about Togo, Rwanda, and Cote d'Ivoire, I believe. That statement is a clear attempt at politicizing the rather sensitive issue of COVID response.
But assuming what you're saying is right, does that? I'm just a quick question. Does that justify the government taking that bait and also deciding them to do politics?
Government has not done politics. What government has sought to do is to set the record straight and to remind Mr. Mahama that if you're talking about management of crisis and management of the economy, you have no moral authority, because your own record in government stinks compared to the record of the current government. And I think that it is only a fair response to what invitation Mr. Mahama himself gave out. And that is why today at our press briefing, we made the point that if we do not want to degenerate into those political jabs here and there, then we should not even encourage an opposition that believes that they are entitled to do that, but that goes around, or that.
Just a second. So you're saying that if the NDC decides to go on, as you see it, to politicize this and keep on throwing jabs at you, you're going to stop the fight against COVID-19 and keep on responding to them because NDC is doing it. So why can't we do it? Is that the point you're pushing?
No, we are not stopping. We are remaining focused, but we are saying that when we suspect that misrepresentation and falsehood has been peddled, we will take time to respond and to set the record.
But that is time that you need to be focusing on avoiding and helping us avoid more deaths and infections from COVID-19, especially from the Vice President, who is chairing the COVID-19 committee.
Dealing with misinformation itself is also part of the effort to confront COVID-19. We cannot deal with the fake news. We cannot deal with the misinformation. We cannot deal with the peddling of falsehood. We cannot allow it pass. It has the tendency to derail the fight also. And so we have to take time to deal with some of the misinformation, the falsehood, and the outright fabrications that are being published.
Mr. Segbefia, there is something called a responsible opposition. So, yes, we're hitting hard at the government, and I've seen Twitter respond with hashtag Baumia must focus. However, the opposition too has a responsibility to be responsible because there is a public health crisis. You think it's okay because you're in opposition that you lack you're a government in waiting to also be playing politics with such a sensitive issue that has killed 18 of the people you're seeking to lead if you are elected on December 7th.
Evans, I don't think that is even the beginning of, let me put you a fair question. let me make my position clear on a number of issues. There was no need for the President of Bawumia to respond to anything perhaps President Mahama was saying about
Why? Why is there no need?
Because it wasn't President Mahama who first said that the economy was in a difficulty and it is going to take 3 years to recover. It was the finance minister himself. And he actually published it in a paper. You know what I'm talking about, and it is true. So if they needed to rectify or correct anything, they should go to the finance ministry, talk to the finance minister, and let him come back and say that.
But that's not exactly how Mahama, the former president, puts it.
I'm not saying that, please, Evans.
You're paraphrasing. Yeah, he was
saying that Mahama was only agreeing with, even no matter what he said, he was only agreeing with what had been said by the finance minister. And giving detail of what had been said, that the economy is suffering. And that it had not even suffered. It has suffered a blow to the extent that it cannot recover for 3 years. Where did that come from? Was it from Mahama? He came and said it after it had been already put out. Anytime the NPP put out something and the media pick on it or the opposition pick on it and say, okay, then they come back to come and explain themselves. It wasn't any opposition who said that this economy was suffering. It was the finance minister himself. So please, let's put the things in perspective. And in any event, as I said, the government of the day is not in opposition. They have a responsibility to us. We help, we assist, even without accepting that someone or others may have played politics with an issue. Are you telling me with 125 ministers, you couldn't get any of them to come and respond, but the number one and the number two gentlemen of the land would descend into deep politics, hardcore politics in response, and that is appropriate? Social media, civil society have given them the answer. That is why I have said that if that is their response and that is their answer, fine. We also set up a COVID team of which I'm a member. Evans, I've been on your shows. We try to speak objectively. We don't go anywhere near the politics. If politics comes, we deal with it. So we had been objective. The moment the hospital issue came up, which was mentioned by the president, we went into it and said, look, no, it can't be done for this reason, this reason, this reason.
And you also interpret that as the president doing politics.
Pardon?
You also interpret that as the president also was doing politics when he...
It was.
But let me ask you, you said the government has a responsibility. Do you accept that as an opposition, the largest opposition, but you also have a responsibility?
We do. I'm not running away from
assuming that you were also doing, that there was some political capital being made, are you saying that that responsibility that you have justifies the need to also play politics with this, assuming that's what was happening?
No, but the point that we are making is that when we are in opposition, the extent to which you consider somebody playing politics or not, why is it that you have taken, for example, as President Mahama, look at all the statements that have been mentioned, 7, 6 or 8 statements that Pius adheres to. He's talked about washing of hands. He's talked about mask. He's talked about this thing. All have been given advice. And in his position as a minority leader, but a former president, he has also taken certain actions. He's in a unique position, unique individual, because he has been a former president who is now a flag bearer. It never happened in Ghana. And therefore, he has insights which many would never have, who are also on a campaign trail. And he is saying that, based on what I have seen, I am happy with the things that I did as a former president, because it has justified to me that I was on the right track. And if I come, these are some of the things I will do. Based on that, you come out with a full response when he has also prefixed some of the statements he has made on what your own ministers have said about the economy. Evans, they've taken it too far.
Okay, let me answer a direct question.
The response is not appropriate. The first and second gentlemen of the land are not the ones to respond in the way it has been responded. But I am only gratified about one thing. It's not me saying it. Social media, civil society, religious leaders have all taken the second man of the land and also the first gentleman of the land to task.
Let me ask you this.
Yes.
Is the NDC, John Mahama, because you're very close, you're a member of the team, you're a former finance minister, are you also, in your planning, also seeking to make political capital out of this?
No. Why was the
you have never played politics with this in any of the engagements you've done?
Evans, politics, every time a flag bearer speaks, a president speaks, some level of politics exists.
Partisan politics, I mean.
Yeah, but when you say partisan, what do I call it?
Political capital.
Politics, no. But in terms of what is said, who is saying it, people will always put political notations to it. But to come out and say that, this policy of government is okay, but actually they should have done it earlier, that is not being partisan.
Okay. Pius, so...
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
I say that, look, I'm happy the government has brought in the mask.
Yeah.
Because I've been talking about masks for a while. And I think that we have said it. So we are grateful to government for bringing it.
Yeah.
But they should have been done slightly earlier.
I mean, but let me bring in Pius. So if you, of course, Twitter is not a representation of the population. However, there's a significant number of people there. If you consider that hashtag has been trending since morning, and it's still trending, but as we've been speaking, the number of tweets have gone up again. If you consider it's hashtag Bawumia must focus, is government going to keep responding to the NDC, or you're going to let the people judge and just focus on COVID-19?
Evans, government owes it a duty to the people of Ghana to correct any misrepresentation and any misinformation that anybody, be they flag bearers of political parties or former presidents of the Republic, will put out. It will be our duty to the people to correct that. And so that is that one. Number two, it is also not true that in Mr. Mahama's posturing, he seeks to be repeating merely what forecasts the finance minister has made into the future about the state of the Ghanaian economy. That is not true. Mr. Mahama made categorical statements to the effect and created the impression that the economy under this government was not being properly managed, and that he managed, when he was president, better. That is pure, plain partisan political consideration, and you cannot run away from that fact. In the process, he went ahead to even peddle falsehood, and I just spoke to you about the countries that reportedly, in his view, did or did not go to the IMF for the rapid credit facility. These things are things that any responsible government will have to correct. Again, the review of social media, you have spoken about social media. I think that we all should review social media and we'll find out what the reaction of the people. From where I stand, there are a lot of people who are getting the redirect and who are getting the education about the misinformation that was put out. And so, yes, one hashtag may be trending somewhere else, but several other hashtags are also trending somewhere. And the review that I get also indicates to me that the people of this country also appreciate the fact that when there is misinformation that has been put out, quickly the government moves in to correct that one. But the point is that, Evans, we have to be candid and call it out for what it is. From the very beginning, this whole idea about even an NDC COVID-19 thing, you ask yourself, so why doesn't the CPP have their own CPP COVID-19 thing? Why doesn't the PNC have, and all of that? The NDC had positioned itself. If you listen to narratives from leading members of the NDC, like the General Secretary of the NDC, the Communications Director, even His Excellency, the former President, who is the leader of the NDC today, the NDC had positioned from the very beginning and had been engaged in what I view personally is politicization, and you know it. For instance, everybody, including media houses such as yours and other media houses, everybody, like the private sector, they are making donations into a central COVID-19 fund that is helping across the board. How is it that at the NDC level, they have to break out and isolate themselves if not to occupy a certain political space and all of that. So but I'm not even going to begrudge them on those ones. But the fact of the matter is that where there is a clear case of misinformation, that one
you're entitled to respond. Okay, I'm grateful that you joined me. That is the Deputy Information Minister, Titus. Well, that's not Titus. That's Pius Hajide. I want to bring in a political marketing strategist who's been studying this for a while. That's Dr. Kobe Mensah with the University of Ghana Business School. Dr. Kobe Mensah, this has become you saw this coming. You predicted this 2 weeks ago on PM Express that this is going to get to a head. It appears we are where we are tonight. It's getting to a head. The politics of COVID-19 is taking hold of the country and it's trending since morning. What's your reaction to this? Government says, well, listen, we have been forced to because they force our hand. Government is entitled to respond in kind. You agree?
Well, thanks, Evans, for having me. Well, I think I would disagree a little bit with the government position, respectfully, because since the beginning of this, we've started collecting data. Remember, we're in election time, so we've been observing the movement of the political parties. So we've been collecting data to look at, the space, what is happening. Now, what we find was that right from the beginning, in fact, after the first presentation of the president and the second one, we found that in a majority of the communication, the party's MPP's communication, were, sort of following up on the president's delivery with specific, hashtags, generating conversations, on social media. And the way those, messages were designed, you could really pick it up and think that we're actually in campaigning moments. Obviously, there are indicators to actually demonstrate whether there is campaigning or not. And those frameworks are very widely, published in the academic literature. So going by that, you could actually sense that there is some sort of intensity and some sort of deliberate attempt to generate media intensity, from that perspective. So we could actually figure out that they started using that as campaigning. Now, going forward, you see other, activities, and you ask yourself whether really it was just for COVID-19. For example, they started organizing the youth, campaign, COVID-19 youth campaign. And those parties that were actually, or those figures that were actually featured were, the vice president, the second lady, obviously the minister for information, and particular, characters that you can actually figure out that during elections, they used to appeal to the young people. I mean, somebody would say that perhaps, they were supposed to do that. But if you're actually looking at that not from a campaigning lens, you could actually use experts, for example. And then, of course, if you want traction, you could actually use celebrities as well. However, using these political figures actually sends us a clear signal of an intent, behind what they were doing, and then coupled with other things. So for me, I think that the administration actually started the ball rolling, if not by intent, obviously by the actions of the party communicators actually started this, and perhaps the opposition also latched into it. So I would disagree a little bit respectfully from the position of the administration.
Well, I mean, a very interesting perspective there, Dr. Kobe Mensah. I'm grateful that you could join me. What do you make of this? I mean, this is in the ultimate service of you, the listeners and the voters. 0244-340-437. Still ahead, Defense Minister serves notice, strongest notice, government will renew the Ghana-US military cooperation agreement after expiration, adding the Akufo-Addo administration has been vindicated by the Supreme Court's judgment upholding the agreement as legal.
As NPP government, we think it's a good agreement, it's helping us, and we move on. And I think that the people of Ghana have been vindicated, or at least we those who do that, they should have been vindicated by this, by the results or by the judgment that was given today. So like I said to them,
we'll hear from him and the plaintiff in the matter. Also tonight, be grateful to the president. Government touts its achievements in the fight against COVID-19 as one of the best in the world, but does the evidence support that conclusion?
We took a lot of measures early enough, so we should be very grateful to the Commander-in-Chief, His Excellency the President, for putting in these measures, which had a lot of social and economic problems, but he took it.
We will scrutinize the government claims as the Ghana Medical Association backs calls for change in strategy. Also tonight,
loans that they're going to give specific industries. The hospitality sector is one of them. And the Bank of Ghana, again with the support of the Minister of Finance, has worked towards reducing interest rates and even putting in place a moratorium.
Well, government hands out 3 billion cedi bailouts to the hospitality industry players as well as SMEs as thousands of workers are laid off in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. Today we highlight a story of a chef struggling to fend for his family.
And after working for people for so many years, this is a person who say, go home and I'll pay you 1 month. A lot of thinking, what is next?
You want to stay with us for the details after the break.